Right. So, today I have an article about RFK Jr. And in despite all the crap he's done at the CDC, there is one thing he said that is just beyond nonsensical. I mean, it's obvious he's destroying the CDC and that he's an absolute whack job. But this latest thing that he said is just unbelievable. Possibly even more unbelievable than a religious person claiming that listening to experts is a form of religion and totalitarianism. Because why are religious people claiming religion is bad? That never made any sense to me. But he might have actually taken the cake with this one. But let's get to the article. RFK Jr. peddles dubious health claims as CDC roils under his leadership. And I think that that's actually underselling things. Okay. In a week of chaos at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Donald Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has continued to make questionable medical and health claims and has been slammed for them by experts and lawmakers alike. In recent days, Kennedy has been facing increasing calls for his resignation following the Trump administration's firing of the CDC director, Susan Menares, which in turn prompted for other top officials to quit the agency. The chaos across U.S. health agencies also come as Kennedy released a slew of controversial and contradictory rules surrounding COVID-19 vaccines. On top of all this turmoil, Kennedy has met with significant backlash for a handful of outlandish remarks and revelations which have only fueled the controversy surrounding his leadership at the health department. And before I continue, Chuck Schumer even mentioned on, I don't know if he just sent a letter or if it was just on social media. He mentioned how, Trump, you made a mistake. You need to fire RFK Jr. As if this wasn't the goal. Chuck Schumer just cannot accept that there are people who are bad faith actors and they hire other bad faith actors. Anyway, back to the article. After the deadly mass school shooting in Minneapolis this week, where 2 children were killed and 17 others injured, Kennedy suggested that psychiatric drugs may be contributing to the rise in gun violence across the country. Well, I guess at least he didn't blame it on this person being trans. I guess that's an improvement, but what the fuck? Yes, the very drugs that are supposed to cure mental illness cause mental illness. Now, granted, there are some drugs out there that one of the side effects is literally the very thing that you're taking the drug for. But, it's an antidepressant, but it could cause suicidal thoughts, which, yeah, that's what depression does. I don't see how this is helpful. So, he's not completely wrong. However, causing a rise in gun violence, considering there's still a lot of crazy people who don't commit violence, no, that has nothing to do with it. They're just people who are sick. This person, this trans woman, was obsessed with school shooters. She had a whole I guess you could call it opposition research on all these school shooters. She had research on the church that she was going to shoot up. She went to that school, and considering she is trans and this is a Catholic school, I'm going to say that that's one of the reasons she shot up the school. Why she went after children, not a clue, because these kids didn't do anything to her. But she obviously was having problems outside of being trans, because being trans doesn't suddenly make you hate every group of people in the world. I mean, it might lead you to hate a certain group simply because, as in general, they treat you like crap. But this person hated Catholics, hated Jews, hated Donald Trump, hated everything. So, no. And, yes, unfortunately, there are right-wing sites that are claiming that most school shooters are trans. All you have to do is think a little bit. A lot of school shooters are mentioned on the news. They get plenty of coverage. Very few of them has trans even been part of the conversation. Gender might have, like say Parkland. He hated women. So technically it was about gender, but not his. So, anyway, I went off on a tangent on that one. During an appearance on Fox and Friends, the host Brian Kilmeade asked Kennedy if the health department was investigating whether medications used to treat gender dysphoria might be linked to school shootings, which is basically code for school shooters are trans people, which, again, there have been a few. There have been maybe 2, 3 in recent memory. However, that doesn't mean most school shooters are trans. Most school shooters are cis, white, male. Okay, maybe not white, but cis and male. Most of them are cis and male. So, no. But, yeah. He's trying to goad RFK Jr. into basically admitting that trans people are school shooters, which, no. Again, no. According to court documents reviewed by The Guardian, the 23-year-old shooter, Robin Westman, changed their birth name from Robert to Robin because they identified as a woman. You know, when I first heard that story about how this person was Robert but then changed their name to Robin, I wasn't even thinking trans, because there are males who are named Robin and there are females that are named Robin. So that wasn't an obvious hint that, oh, this is a trans woman. It's just like, wow, why would he change his name? Now it makes sense. Unfortunately, they don't say how long it had been, because, maybe she was just starting her transition. Maybe she was completely transitioned. We don't know at what point she was on her path. But that is a completely separate issue to being obsessed with school shooters and writing disgusting things on your weapons, like, who is your God? Which initially when I saw that was like, oh crap, it's an atheist. Because, again, if it's a group you want to vilify, if you see one example of that group doing a bad thing, like a school shooting, you assume they all do that because, you want to vilify them. So I wasn't thrilled about that, but I don't know. I don't know if she was an atheist or just strictly anti Catholic. Because let's face it, I've met way too many Christians who do not acknowledge Catholics as a form of Christianity. So, even though it was literally the first form of Christianity. But, why should logic mean anything? Okay. In response to Kilmeade's question, Kennedy, without acknowledging the prevalence and easy accessibility of firearms across the U.S., said that his department was launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, drugs, and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. Okay, I'm not sure. I really don't know enough about trans people to know what medications they're on. But do they, in general, take SSRIs? I don't know. I really, really don't know. If you are trans, let me know, because beyond the obvious hormones, but I don't know what, because SSRIs are drugs like antidepressants, which, for most trans people, I would think that they wouldn't need that. They would just, need to transition, and then the depression would go away, provided they're in an environment where people give a shit about them. But yeah, I don't think that that's a standard drug given to trans people. Maybe at the beginning when they are super depressed because, well, gender dysphoria sucks. But I don't know if that's a general case. It's basically, oh, you're trans, so, start transitioning and, you'll feel better. Anyway. Kennedy's comments triggered criticism from the Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, who took to X and wrote, "I dare you to go to Annunciation School and tell our grieving community, in effect, guns don't kill kids, antidepressants do. Just shut up. Stop peddling bullshit. You should be fired." As far as criticisms go, that the phrase "guns don't kill kids" is it's just walking with your eyes wide open into the right-wing bullshit of, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people. As if anybody is literally saying that guns just got up, grew legs, walked, and decided to kill a bunch of people. Nobody is saying that. So the fact that you're saying guns don't kill kids, yeah, that could have been phrased better. This week, Kennedy also suggested, and this is the doozy and the reason I wanted to do this video, that he could identify mitochondrial challenges in children at airports just by looking at them. What the fuck does that mean? All I can think is that he is so desperate to show that he is knowledgeable about the agency he's supposed to be running that he's just throwing any biology words out there and hoping that people will mistake him for someone who knows what the fuck he's talking about. when he obviously doesn't. Speaking at an event in Texas alongside the state's governor, Greg Abbott, Kennedy claimed, "I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today, as I walk down the street, and I see these kids that are just overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, with inflammation." I'm sorry, what? Inflammation comes from damaged mitochondria? Do you have any idea what words mean? Any at all? I mean, I'm not anything close to a biologist, but what? That makes zero sense. Now, there are certain things you can tell by looking at kids. Like, you can definitely tell someone who has Down syndrome just by looking at them, because they have the features of Down syndrome, and all Down children tend to look alike. So, you can do that. You can tell when someone has cerebral palsy. So there are certain conditions you can see that a person has, but you can see inflammation. If you can see inflammation on a kid who's walking by you, that person is not able to walk or move their bodies at all, because what the hell? I suffer from osteopathic arthritis. I can assure you, you do not notice that watching these videos. And I'm probably closer to you than this dipshit is to the children he claims he watches as they walk by. And nobody would be able to tell when I'm having an episode. Well, basically because it's in my lower body, so there's one thing. But even if it wasn't, even if it was in my hands, you wouldn't tell. And I regularly show my hands, so technically you should be able to see that. But no, I'm pretty sure nobody would know if my hands were inflamed, because if they're inflamed that much, that's a problem. And that isn't something that it would take a stranger just watching you walk by to notice. You can tell from their faces. There are children or adults even, who have to be on steroids. Not anabolic steroids. That's completely different. But need to be on steroids for certain conditions. That will cause inflammation. But again, and my dad would be able to tell. He would be able to look at someone's face and say, yep, that person's on steroids. Actually, I think my mom could tell it also. But the point is, medical professionals can tell. This dipshit is not that. You can tell from their faces, from their body movements, and from their lack of social connection. I'm sorry, are you living in the 21st century? Everybody is talking about how kids and adults, young adults, do not know how to communicate in a social setting because they grew up on their phones and they didn't talk to a lot of people growing up. So, heck, I think I saw an article not that long ago about how millennials don't know the art of flirting. That it's a lost art for millennials because they do dating apps and just talk on the phone. So they don't know how to flirt. You could call that a lack of social connection. But that has zero to do with mitochondria. That just means that they're on their phones too damn much. Mitochondria has nothing to do with it. And I know that's not how children are supposed to look. How the fuck are children supposed to look, dumbass? Because he's just claiming he can tell from certain things that he can tell something's wrong. But he's not giving examples. He's not saying, "Oh, when someone looks like this, that means this." He's not even attempting to give examples. He's just hoping, and since this is a bunch of right-wingers he's speaking to, they're just going to gobble it up, think he knows what the fuck he's talking about, and be like, "Oh, really? Maybe I should ask about this, 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 and this." When what he's saying is complete bullshit. In response, Ashish Jha, former White House COVID-19 response coordinator under the Biden administration, said, "I'm sorry, but what?" Yeah, basically. This is wacky, flat earth voodoo stuff, people. This is not normal, Jha added on X. Then, in a revelation on Thursday, Dmitry Daskalakis, who recently resigned as director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases in protest of Monarez's firing, revealed that Kennedy had never been briefed by CDC experts before making major public health decisions. Well, of course not. Kennedy thinks he knows fucking everything. So of course he doesn't need to be briefed. I mean, Trump doesn't get briefed about shit either. And when he does, unfortunately, he fixates on certain sentences and suddenly makes a big deal out of nothing. So I'm not sure which is worse. However, if he's going to act like he knows everything, then of course he's not going to feel the need to be briefed because he obviously knows better. Or like he claimed on Tucker Carlson's show that you shouldn't listen to experts. Listening to experts is religion and totalitarianism. Which makes me wonder, that brainworm that he has, the dead brainworm, who did he go see about it? Because if he went to see a doctor, then he's full of shit. Because it's a medical issue, he went to the doctor. But we're not supposed to rely on experts. We're not supposed to listen to experts because that's religion and totalitarianism. But yet, he went to a doctor. So please, please, please realize he's so full of shit. So, and like that's what brought up the rant earlier about why are there religious people who treat religion like it's a bad thing if it's used in a way they don't like. Like, listening to experts is a religion. Or you need to have faith in order to believe science. I'm sorry. You're religious. And because you're religious, you have faith. Which I thought were supposed to be good things, which were supposed to be virtues, and now you're telling me they're bad because why exactly? Because it's not something you want to agree with? Anyway. Speaking to CNN, Daskalakis said, "I think that another important thing to ask the secretary is, has he been briefed by a CDC expert on anything, specifically measles, COVID-19, flu? I think that people should ask him that in that hearing," referring to Kennedy's upcoming hearing before the Senate Finance Committee. I think I can easily say the Democratic senators are totally going to ask him those questions. The Republicans are going to do performative bullshit because that's the way the Republican Party rolls nowadays. Because Trump was the one who appointed RFK Jr. He 100% believes in him. So, of course, the Republicans have to fall in line because they are scared shitless of Trump. Hell, Lisa Murkowski said that they're all afraid. Great. You know who else are afraid? Immigrants. Or people who just happen to be brown, but, because they are brown, they get accosted by ICE. They stand up. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is fighting. People are fighting. Nobody is threatening your lives. At least not Trump. At least I don't believe yet. So all you have to do is vote. The worst that'll happen to you is you lose your seat, as opposed to losing your life. So let's keep things in perspective here. Upon being asked what Kennedy's answer would be, Daskalakis said, "The answer is no. No one from my center has ever briefed him on any of those topics. He's getting information from somewhere, but that information is not coming from CDC experts. It's coming from right-wing conspiracy theories, like the vaccine skeptics." I don't like that term. I don't like the term of vaccine skeptics because it assumes that there's actually something to the skepticism. No, there's nothing to the skepticism. They just don't understand how shit works. So they're going to assume that they know something that others don't, which isn't how anything works. In a separate statement to the Daily Beast, Daskalakis said, "It's not just that he hasn't asked us. I asked for us to be able to do briefings, and I was told by his office of the secretary officials, some of whom are now fired, that they would be happy to have us do briefings, that they would reach out to be able to set them up. They've never done so." Probably those were the ones who got fired because, RFK Jr. knows everything. He doesn't need CDC experts, which is good because they all left. Or a good many of them did. Since he assumed leadership over the health department, Kennedy, a longtime anti-vaccine advocate, has fired health agency workers and entertained conspiracy theories. Last week, more than 750 current and former employees at U.S. health agencies signed a letter in which they criticized Kennedy as an existential threat to public health. Well, yeah, he's shut off the funding for mRNA vaccines. They have made it very difficult for most people to get a COVID-19 shot. Only waiting for when they're going to go after the flu. But apparently they're also going after hepatitis. They're going after measles. The vaccine, not the actual disease. Because if they were going after disease, that would be good. So, yes. You can look forward to seeing more measles in this country and more whooping cough, probably more all sorts of diseases that should have been pretty much kept under wraps, if not out and out eradicated, simply because this dipshit does not know what he's doing. The health agency workers went on to accuse Kennedy of being complicit in dismantling America's public health infrastructure and endangering the nation's health by repeatedly spreading inaccurate health information. The letter comes after a deadly shooting at the CDC headquarters in Atlanta earlier this month, when a 30-year-old gunman fired more than 180 rounds into the buildings, killing a police officer before dying from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. According to the gunman's father, the shooter had been struggling with mental health issues and was influenced by misinformation that led him to believe that COVID-19 vaccine was making him sick. So that is the end of that article. So yes, that is my conundrum about free speech. On the one hand, you should be free to say whatever bullshit you want to. On the other hand, what happens when people actually believe it? So, yeah, it's the state of the US is just getting worse and worse. DC is under occupation. Chicago might be next. And we are going to all be less healthy because we have nobody of competence running the CDC. We have nobody of competence running the EPA. This country is crumbling before our eyes, and it only took a few months. Imagine what this country is going to look like in 4 years, in 2028. Because people keep saying, oh, the Democrats will save us in 2026. He doesn't fucking care what Congress does. He'll let Congress do what they do when it's stuff he agrees with. But otherwise, he just ignores Congress. So I fail to see what the midterms are going to do. And then we have the Supreme Court, who again is basically letting him get away with whatever he wants to do. Anyway, so yeah, that's a depressing note to end on. But anyway, that is all I have for this article. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.